I've been staring at my ceiling for 3 hours, trying to figure out how to start this story. Because every time I try, I feel like I'm going to cry. Not sad crying, more like the kind of crying that happens when something beautiful sneaks up on you and catches you completely off guard. So let me just start at the beginning. Her name is Maya. We've been best friends since the 7th grade. That's 11 years. 11 years of sleepovers, of sharing headphones on the bus, of texting each other at 2 a.m. about absolutely nothing and everything. 11 years of her knowing exactly what I need before I even know I need it. 11 years of me thinking I knew everything about her. I was wrong. It started on a Tuesday, which is funny because nothing important is supposed to happen on a Tuesday. Tuesdays are for laundry and grocery runs and re-watching shows you've already seen. Tuesdays are not supposed to be the day your entire world quietly rearranges itself. Maya and I had been living together for about 8 months at that point. We'd moved into this little apartment together after college, split the rent down the middle, decorated the kitchen with plants we kept almost killing, and then miraculously saving. It was the kind of living situation that felt so natural, we never even questioned it. She had a habit of leaving her journal on the coffee table, a dark green hardcover thing she'd carried around for years. I never touched it. That was the rule, unspoken but absolute. You don't read someone's journal. You don't even think about it. I wasn't going to read it. I want to make that very clear. But that Tuesday, she'd left it open on the couch. Not closed, not tucked away, open. And as I sat down, I wasn't snooping. I was just sitting. The page caught my eye, and I saw my name, not just once. My name was everywhere on that page. I told myself not to read it. I picked up my phone. I tried to scroll. But you know when something pulls at you so hard that the not knowing actually feels worse than whatever you might find out. I sat there for maybe 30 seconds, and then I read it. She was talking about a day we'd had the week before. We'd gone to this little farmer's market on Sunday morning, just the two of us, because we do that sometimes. We got coffee and walked around, and she found this ridiculous hand-painted sign that said "Grow where you're planted," and I made fun of it in the most merciless way, and she laughed so hard she almost dropped her coffee in her journal. She wrote about that moment. She wrote about how the sunlight was coming through the trees, and how I was mid-roast of a stranger's hand-painted sign, and how she looked at me and thought, and I'm paraphrasing, because I was too stunned to memorize the exact words, she thought that she had never felt more sure of anything than she felt about me in that moment. She wrote that she was terrified, wrote that she'd been terrified for a long time. I put the journal back exactly how I found it. I went to my room. I sat on the edge of my bed, and I did not move for probably 20 minutes. And in those 20 minutes, my entire memory of the last 11 years started reorganizing itself, the way she always remembered the small things. Not just my birthday, but my half-birthday, which I'd mentioned one time as a joke. The way she'd shown up to my apartment at midnight with soup when I got sick. Even though I'd only texted her, I wasn't feeling great. I hadn't asked her to come. The way she looked at me sometimes when she thought I wasn't paying attention. I'd always interpreted it as the comfortable warmth of a long friendship. What if it had been something else this entire time? I need to pause here and be honest about something. When I say I started to wonder, I don't mean it was all new information. I think, and this is hard to admit, I think some part of me had been protecting myself from knowing. Not because I didn't care about Maya. Because I cared about her so much that the idea of getting it wrong, of misreading something and damaging what we had, was scarier than any other outcome I could imagine. She was the most important person in my life. She had been for 11 years. The fear of losing that kept me from asking questions. I probably should have asked a long time ago. And reading that journal, which I should not have done, which I still feel complicated about, and which we will get to, reading it forced me to ask a question I'd been carefully avoiding. How did I feel about her? Not, how did I feel about her as my best friend? I knew the answer to that. She was irreplaceable. She was the person I wanted to call when something good happened. She was the person I wanted next to me when something bad happened. She was, in the most literal sense, home. But that's what people say about a best friend, too, right? So where's the line? I sat in my room that Tuesday evening, and I made myself think about it honestly. I made myself remember moments that I'd filed away under categories like that was sweet or that's just how we are. I took them out and looked at them differently. The time she held my hand in the movie theater and didn't let go even after the scary part was over. I'd thought nothing of it. We were comfortable. We were close. That's just us. The time I got a promotion at work and she cried before I did. She cried and then laughed at herself and said she was just happy for me. And I'd hugged her and told her she was the best person I knew. The time she'd dated someone for about 4 months, and I told myself I was being a supportive friend when I felt relieved when it ended. That last one, I had to sit with. Here's the thing about the heart. It knows things before your brain does. The brain is slow and afraid, and it needs evidence and logical frameworks and time to process. The heart just knows. And then it waits, patiently, for the rest of you to catch up. My heart, apparently, had been waiting a while, because when I let myself actually feel it, not think about it, just feel it, it wasn't a mystery. There was no big, dramatic realization. There was just this quiet, simple, absolutely terrifying truth sitting there like it had always been there, which it had. Okay, so now I have to tell you the part that I'm most embarrassed about. I avoided her for 4 days, in an apartment that we shared. I avoided my roommate and best friend for 4 days by being extremely busy with invented tasks, going to bed early, and leaving for work before she was awake. Was this mature? No. Was this a well-thought-out strategy? Absolutely not. Was I fully aware that I was being ridiculous, even as I was doing it? Yes. 100% yes. But here's the thing. I didn't just have to figure out what I was feeling. I had to figure out what to do about the fact that I'd read her journal, which I should not have done. Even if it was open. Even if it was technically visible. I had accessed something private, and I felt genuinely awful about it. So I was avoiding her for 2 reasons. 1, I was terrified. 2, I was guilty. A great combination. On the 4th day, she knocked on my bedroom door. I said, "Come in the most casual voice I could manage, which was not very casual at all. She opened the door and stood in the doorway and just looked at me for a second. And then she said, "What's happening with you? Are you okay?" And I said, "I'm fine, I've just been tired." And she said, "You've been avoiding me." Not a question, a statement. I opened my mouth to deny it, and then I just didn't, because it was Maya. And I hadn't lied to Maya since we were 15, and I told her I liked her haircut when I very much did not. And that was 17 years ago, and she found out immediately and never let me forget it. So I said, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to not hate me." She sat down on the edge of my bed. "Okay." I read your journal. Silence. Not on purpose. It was open, and I sat down, and I saw my name, and I'm so sorry. I know that was wrong. I'm really sorry. She was quiet for a long moment, and then she said, "Which page?" I told her. Another silence. Longer this time, and then she stood up and said, "Okay," very quietly, and walked out. She didn't speak to me for the rest of that night. I lay in my room catastrophizing. I had destroyed the most important friendship of my life, because I couldn't not read an open journal. I had taken something that was hers, and now everything was ruined. And she would move out, and I would spend the rest of my life learning a very important lesson in boundaries too late to matter. I didn't sleep at about 6 in the morning. I heard her get up. I heard her make coffee. I lay there listening to the sounds of her moving around the apartment, and I thought, I have to fix this. I don't know what that looks like, but I have to try. I got up. I went to the kitchen. She was standing by the counter with her coffee, looking out the window. She heard me come in, and she turned around. She looked exhausted. I said, I'm sorry. I know sorry doesn't fix it, but I'm so sorry. She looked at me for a long time, and then she said, I'm not mad at you for reading it. I said, you should be. She said, maybe, but I'm not. She wrapped both hands around her mug. I'm scared, though. What she said next took me a long time to fully absorb. She said she'd been aware for a long time that she felt something for me that didn't fit neatly into the category of friendship. But she'd made a choice. She'd made a choice to be my best friend completely and to let that be enough. Because what we had was real and it was good, and she was not going to risk it by saying something that could never be unsaid. She said the journal was for her, not for anyone else. It was how she processed things she couldn't say out loud. She wasn't hiding it from me maliciously. She was just living with it, quietly. She said, I wasn't going to tell you. I want you to know that. I wasn't going to tell you.